if you observe a person who's well balanced and a person who is depressed, really the only difference is their choice of focus and their choice of action. That's literally it. That's literally it, right? And of course, there's going to be external circumstances that can come up, which is going to put maybe a balanced person or more of a balanced person in a depressive state. But I do believe it is a temporary thing, and then eventually, even the most balanced people can find their ways to be balanced again, even if they're unbalanced, right? Like I said, life is not always about being 100% balanced, right? Because that's not really realistic, right? But what is realistic is trying to find the balance and striving to have the balance in your life, right? And like I said, doing these few things, right? Like I said, you need to define what this is for you. And if you don't have enough of these things, because maybe you're choosing too much dopamine things, then you need to reconstruct your life. You need to change up your actions. You must evaluate your mental state based off of the things that you do. Because quite frankly, most of the time, the way that you feel is in direct correlation to the things in which you do. And if you're not choosing the right actions, or you're only choosing the actions I would suggest that makes you the happiest that you possibly can be, maybe maybe there's something better that you potentially can do. And like I mentioned, just to simply observe the actions of a person who's more well balanced, maybe in a better mental state, right? What are the things that they go ahead and do that allows them to maintain that? As opposed to a person who is depressed, there's certain things that I've noticed that depressed people go ahead and do, and there's certain things that I've noticed that well balanced people go ahead and do, right? It's not necessarily this big mystery of why people are in the state of in the mental state that they're in, right? This isn't necessarily something that should be just like, oh, I wonder why they're this way, or I wonder why. And I see like a lot of people who are depressed or who they're in a depressive state. They're like they make it seem like being balanced is the most elusive thing that ever existed, and this is something that is not necessarily attainable, right? Like I said, simply point out what's the difference between these people, right? You need to be a good enough observer of life to understand that um there's certain reasons for these things. There are truly certain reasons for these things, and if you're attentive enough, then and if you're attentive enough and you're smart enough to go ahead and implement the things that well balanced people go ahead and do, then you're going to be a more well balanced person, and you're going to avoid yourself from the lowest of lows of life. All right. Give me 1 second. If you guys have any comments or questions regarding today's episode, or maybe there's something that you feel like I haven't mentioned yet, I want you to go and let me know in the comments. All right. Give me 1 second. Let's see how far I went. And another thing I want to mention with this as well. This is something that I thought to be one of the most interesting things when it comes to just analyzing depression and people who are depressed, right? Which is a question that I had gotten from Jordan Peterson. If you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, he's a person that I would recommend you go ahead and watch. But I was watching one of the videos that he was talking about depression, and the most profound question that I've ever heard him ask was, "Do you have depression, or do you just have a terrible life?" Right? And his argument was, most people truly just have a terrible life, and of course you're going to feel negative emotions because, quite frankly, it's warranted. But it's also fixable. There's also certain adjustments that you can go ahead and make, and you won't be feeling the ways in which you do. But it really all goes back down to your action that you go ahead and take on a daily basis. Are you acting in line with your values, or are you simply just doing the things that you want to go ahead and do? Are you living within that state of a serotonin, or are you living within that state of yourself that is more of the dopamine, right? And that is simply pretty much the difference, right? So ask yourself the question, right? Do you have a terrible life? Is there certain things that you can go ahead and change that you know you can change that are within your control that would allow you to be in a better mental state? Or are you actually depressed? Whatever that looks like. Like I said, I don't necessarily believe that. I don't believe depression is something that is a forever thing, and it shouldn't be a forever thing, and it should be perceived as something that is just a temporary state of being. Like I said, you can be depressed, but you shouldn't have depression, right? Simply analyze your actions. There's something wrong. It is a key. If you're feeling that specific way, and like I said, I'm not saying this is going to fulfill within um This isn't going to be this isn't going to say for all circumstances of people who are depressed, this is why they're depressed, right? But I'm gonna say for a lot of people who are depressed, they simply just have a terrible life. They simply could just make certain adjustments, and their life would automatically be better. That are literally within their control, right? It's very few and far between where somebody's depressed and there's not something that they can change, or there's not something that they can go ahead and act on, or there's not something that they can go ahead and focus on that would make them in a better mental state, right? I just don't see that as as something that just like can exist, right? And like I said, you must analyze where you placing your focus and what are you acting on, right? Those two things are going to be essentially setting you up for either failure or success. Failure or success, depending on the way that you feel, right? I would say a successful person is going to be a person who's definitely going to be in a better mental state, right? It doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter how much status you have. If you're not in a good mental state, quite frankly, you are a loser, in my opinion. You're not successful, in my opinion, right? That's just according to my own definition of success, which is something that I would also recommend for you to go ahead and define for yourself for sure. And another thing with this, and I do believe I did hear this from Jordan Peterson as well, and this is something worth considering as well. People who are depressed, they're not necessarily striving for anything better than their current situation. They're either in one to two situations, super locked into the present, where since their present self isn't the most ideal self, so therefore they feel some type of way about their life, or they're stuck in the past, for the better or no, not even for the better, for the worse. They're just stuck in the past, and with being stuck in the past, it is not allowing you to place enough focus on the present. Therefore, not allowing you to place enough emphasis on the future and how the future will turn out. Right? They don't believe their future circumstances will be within their favor, or they're not within their necessary control. Right? So the question I have for you is this, right? Are you aiming towards a better life? Are you acting in accordance to what a better life in the future would look like? And the people who are the more than likely the people who are depressed, they usually don't. They usually, which goes back to what I mentioned earlier, they're cashing out right now. They're doing and being in a line with the dopamine version of themselves, which is basically saying, you know what, man, I'm not feeling the best, but what I know what can help get me up to where I need to be. I'm gonna play video games. I'm gonna eat this junk food, right? I'm gonna do all the things that maybe they're not the best for me, but quite frankly, they're gonna make me happy right now. And that's all they do. And like I said, it's a vicious cycle. They're either super happy because they're doing something that's gonna bring them that temporary happiness, or they're super in a negative state, and the only way to get them out of that negative state is to get the next hit of dopamine, which is whatever to them, right? Um, but like I said, they don't have a balance. They're not pursuing things that's going to make them a person of character, right? That's going to give them a fulfilling life. That's going to necessarily give them an aim worth striving for, right? They don't believe the future will be better, right? They don't believe the future has potential to be better. And quite frankly, everyone that does exist, when it comes down to it, if you're doing what you need to go ahead and do on a daily basis, the future will be better. It has no other choice but to be better, but that's only if you're acting in accordance in the present moment. If you're acting in accordance in the present moment of the actions that would give you a benefit in the long term, right? So, for example, working out is a huge one that if you just did that and eventually you start to see progress, you're going to be in a better mental state. Regardless of who you are, regardless of your circumstance, that's going to make you feel better. I'm not saying it's going to be the solution to all of your problems. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that's at least one aspect of life that is worth pursuing. That is something that can be improved upon. That is within your control if you have the enough, if you have the resources, and if you're acting in accordance to the resources that you should be acting on. Yeah, like I said, it's pretty much as simple as that. So where are you placing your focus? What are you acting on, and what side of you are you acting on? Right? Are you acting on the dopamine version of yourself? Are you acting on the cortisol version of yourself? Are you acting on the serotonin version of yourself? because those things are going to dictate the ways in which you feel,